A very good afternoon, everybody. And at the outset, I would like, on my own behalf and that of all the participants and audiences, to offer some words of thanks to Professor Alam and his honorable team for having us today in this prestigious conference, whose aim is to help MENA states achieve Agenda 2030. Development of higher education institutions has become both a global responsibility and a national imperative. Hence, we need to find out what opportunities and challenges are most likely to face social policy and decision makers in MENA states. And so I hope my address will have some practical policy implications. My object is therefore to highlight what I believe to be the major challenges and examine the current and possible solutions to MENA higher education institutions development problems. So let me share.
You can. Okay, good.
Okay. Can you see
yes,
this?
Yes, very clear. Clear, yes.
Okay. Okay. Then I start with the premises and the problem areas. Firstly, almost all MENA states suffer from a lack of robust education plans geared to addressing the root problems underlying higher education institutions. Their annual budgets allocate insufficient funds to the social service sector, including education, public health, and research and development. The approaches to solving higher education problems are faulty because despite a lack of a finance supporting system, they adopt expansionary plans. As you can see from the slide there, their annual budgets allocate insufficient funds to social service sector, including education and public health and research and development. And they and despite that, they adopt expansionary educational plans for their higher education institutions, including institutes and colleges. So the authorities get caught up in a trade-off quandary as they favor quantity over quality. The most vivid example here is the Sudan during the 1990s and up to 2018, a period which she saw exponential growth of higher education institutions. But a majority also of the Arab states have adopted expansionary plans, and recent survey in Arab states revealed shocking statistics that between 2003 and 2015, they expanded their higher education institutions from 233 to over 700, and that is a staggering 200.4%. And the irony is that expenditure on higher education institutions on scientific research is a mere 0.2 to 0.6 of GDP compared to between 2 and 4% in industrialized developed countries. The obvious effect is dearth of research output, a condition that reflects negatively in terms of impact on industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And this is shown here on table 1. It shows this worrying impact. if we look at the overall percentages in the last column, you will see that with the exception of King Abdulaziz University, almost all other MENA states scored nearly below 50%. The second problem, equally big and interrelated to the first, is to do with openness, which also affects the higher education institutions' world rankings. This is shown here in also table 2, which indicates that even a good university like King Abdulaziz University scored badly on openness rank and worldwide impact and excellence. The third major problem then, as emerged from tables 1 and 2, is that research and innovation linkages are not strong enough to make a worldwide impact. Dissatisfied researchers working in about 22 Arab states have attributed this to what they correctly believe is the environment that does not support doing science. But also by and large, recent surveys highlight a series of major challenges facing scientific research. And these include 1, underfunding of scientific research. 2, low output of scientific research and publications and patents in particular. 3, graduate students produce scientific research that fails to address the mundane socioeconomic problems of the Arab world. 4th, collaboration between MENA higher education institutions is lacking in terms of information exchange, experience, and joint research publications. 5th, poor linkages between scientific research and national development sustainable plans. 6th, too little incentives for innovation and entrepreneurship cast dark shadows on motivation. 7th, and probably most importantly, that the governance system of many MENA higher education institutions lack full autonomy. And another important survey traced these problems down to pre-university education. One survey on GCC countries' schools revealed findings pointing to student underachievement in both mathematics and sciences. Such low learning outcomes among students would seriously hamper the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's efforts aimed at joining the so-called world-class university club. The gravity of the problem will be presently clear as we look at the figures shown on table 3 here. On table 3 here, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
On table 3, which compares learning outcomes for Saudi students to OECD averages. You can see that the Saudi students' scores are low or lower than those of OECD students by almost 100 points. Now, despite these problems, Saudi Arabia has to some extent delivered on its pledges to excel among other MENA states. And at least 2 of its universities are now on the top of the Arab world higher education institutions. And according to the Times Higher Education rankings of 10 universities, as shown on table 4 here. Such results have emboldened the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as it strives hard to join the highly prestigious world-class university club We need to have a look at the major features of this world-class university model in order to see if the pledges made on the part of policy and decision makers of Saudi Arabia to catapult at least 2 Saudi universities into the top 200 universities in the Arab, into the top world rankings. Let us look at this model propounded by Lee J, as shown in figure 1 here. This is a model of world-class university model, or a concept. And a cursory look into this model reveals that an array of factors would act as bottlenecks for all MENA states, not only Saudi Arabia. The chief hurdle lies with the governance system. As you can see it below here, the governance system that lacks institutional autonomy. And related to this is the inadequate openness or internationalization. You can see it from the top there, down number 2 on column number 1. This internationalization, which we referred to earlier. And this is due to micro-level internal tensions and these structural disadvantages, which are major barriers to global competitiveness. The recommended solutions are displayed on the last column here. You can see them in the last column in this figure on what can be done, and which I hope must be given serious considerations on the part of decision makers and educational planning authorities. And to conclude then, it appears that ascendance of MENA higher education institutions to world-class universities in general would prove to be a tall order unless the chief problems enumerated earlier are squarely and promptly addressed. In the higher education institutions, prospective researchers and scholars would require more intensive training and methods and techniques of research and teaching these methods as a stepping stone to practical work and public service. Secondly, experience tends to indicate that severance of higher education institutions from the status control of their economic, social, and cultural activities is key to resolving the underlying problems. I would venture to forcibly argue that universities, rather than the state, must have the upper hand in restructuring society on the basis of knowledge. And for this to bear fruit, however, it is incumbent upon MENA states in general to approach changes into their higher education institutions with a new cultural outlook. And now I would like to round up my speech with hopefully some enlightened recommendations. And with these recommendations, we advise to note that there is no one size fits all as far as MENA states are concerned. Each has its own specific problems and priorities and must therefore feel free to select the points it deems relevant. Number 1, recommendation number 1, MENA states must develop realistic targets and strategies for developing public and private higher education institutions with a detailed allocation of their scarce scientific and technological resources. Number 2, the limited financial resources would better be earmarked for improvement and capacity building of pre-existing higher education institutions rather than following the present costly expansionary policies. Number 3, research requirement priorities should be rescheduled to match the pressing national needs, whether the latter are sending students on scholarship overseas, teacher training, or importation of research results carried out abroad. Number 4, the incessant drive towards building world-class universities seems to be motivated by a desire to achieve national prestige. Were this to be true, then the state must balance this objective with equally important aims of with the equally important aims of sustaining economic development and growth and public welfare. Trade-off between these major aims could prove too costly. Number 5, research and development programs must give more emphasis on innovation and offer lucrative incentives for entrepreneurship as a stimulus for researchers and graduates to reach out to the marketplace. The labor market is likely to respond more positively to new graduates once competence is shown. This in turn would relieve the chronic problems of graduate unemployment. Number 6, a reliable patenting system is badly needed to support innovation and research and development.
Your recommendation in discussion, if you can.
Number 7, the recommendation number 7 is the collaboration between MENA higher education institutions through prompt and timely share of information, and the rising stock of knowledge must be encouraged and boosted, as this is more likely to ease accessibility to information and reduce costs. Number 8, for the purposes of number 7 above, we would recommend that a MENA information network be built as a regional pool accessible to all member states. Alongside this, every member country should introduce improvements to its existing higher education institutions and maintain its national research and development inventory for its own use and for that of the rest of the MENA states. And finally, a recommendation by the World Bank and OECD joint panel to the government of Egypt 10 years earlier still holds relevance today and should be reiterated for all MENA states. It is recommended that MENA states should adopt a holistic approach to raising educational quality and effectiveness that would focus on learning outcomes in terms of the capabilities that graduates will need in a changing world for life, work, and further learning. B, integrate research into university education, especially in graduate schools. C, involve government agencies and institutions accepting shared responsibility for raising the standards of educational inputs, processes, and outputs in consultation with employers and in the context of a strategic approach to internationalization. Thanking you very much.
So please remember, if we all help and do a little bit, it will make a big difference.